Hey everybody. All right, I see Sam is on, and now I'm gonna figure out how to add him. Here you go.
What's up, baby? What do you think of
Hey,
what do you
look at
think of my
that.
shirt?
Look at that. That's wonderful. That's a
How
great
are you,
surprise.
man?
I'm good. We're here in El Paso, Texas. We voted today, so this is my shirt. Uh,
Oh, yes.
yeah, and life
Hey, can
is
you hear
life
me
is
all
really
right? I've
good,
got
and
some
it's a
weird I got
it's a
some
big
weird
honor to be talking
Wi-Fi.
with you.
Oh man, it is such an honor to be talking to you today. Can you hear me all right? Is my Wi-Fi okay?
Perfect. We can see you clearly,
Great.
especially that shirt that you're wearing, and
Oh, yes.
you sound great. Let me get one really important matter out of the way. Are you in fact portraying Paul Stanley of Kiss in an upcoming movie?
That is still up in the air. We started shooting and then everything got shut down because of COVID. So we'll see, man. It's still gonna be hopefully happening. Who knows? Who knows? But
What
it would
what
be great.
what does Kiss mean to you? Did you grow up listening to Kiss? Did they have an influence on you?
I honestly didn't really listen to Kiss until I got the role, and then I started learning more about Paul and learning more about the band, and I mean, I connected on a very deep level just to the commitment that they had to each other and to the music, and feeling a bit like outsiders. I feel like my band, we were coming up at a time where we were in Brooklyn, and there were these incredible bands coming out of Brooklyn that were very sophisticated and complex, and we were making this music that was pretty much straightforward, like pop rock, and didn't feel like we fit in at all, and so I definitely identified with that. And then I communicated a little bit with Paul while I was studying the role, and that was cool. How about you? Were you a Kiss fan growing up?
You know, a little bit, not a huge fan, but I read this book, which if you have not read, I really recommend, called Please Kill Me.
Oh yeah.
And it's the oral history
Oh my
punk
God,
rock.
yes, I have read this book. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
it's amazing. And there's this through line from Jim Morrison of the Doors, who is playing a show in Michigan in the late 60s, and a young Iggy Pop is in the audience and sees Jim Morrison just
Oh my
completely
God.
blasted out of his mind on stage, and maybe even vomiting in the middle of his performance. Is like, I want to be that dude. I want to be that dude. And the
I
Stooges and the
I remember it.
MC5 and the whole Detroit sound, and mixing into the Velvet Underground in New York, and at some point they intersect with Kiss, who the New York Dolls, and that whole scene. It's just fascinating time in American music.
I remember reading that book when I was in high school because I was a huge Stooges fan. Like huge. If I'm not wearing my Beto O'Rourke t-shirt, I'm wearing my Iggy and the Stooges t-shirt because I just like, I don't know, the energy that that man has on stage. We saw him at a festival that we played in Holland, and it was like, I mean, he's definitely old, but he hasn't lost that, like, he's like a cheetah on
Yeah,
stage. It's crazy. I
he's in
want to
great
ask
shape.
you I want to ask you about your band. Are you still
It
playing?
it No, not so much. Hold on, I got to show you this chicken that just flew up to my window. I don't know if you can
Oh, nice.
see this hen
God.
that we've got in the backyard. Yeah, and there's the
That's like a Disney hen.
so so part of the deal, at the beginning of quarantine, our daughter Molly talked us into buying some chicks who grew up to be chickens. A
Oh my
couple of them
God.
roosters that we gave away, that hopefully are still walking the earth, and then a bunch of hens who are starting to lay eggs for us. And every now and then I'm in this little nook
Wow.
by the window, and this hen that we call Fluffy will pop
Oh
up
my
and want to say
God.
hello. You can see this little duck behind her on the ground.
Oh
So
wow.
I was, Sam, I was, kind of coming of age musically in the 80s. I was born in 72, kind of, listening to the Clash and London Calling, somebody lent me the record in the
Yeah.
mid '80s,
I
blew my
saw that,
mind.
that's like kind of the theme for the phone banking that you just did,
Yeah, yeah.
which we got to talk about too, because I've been doing a little phone banking myself, and your interview with PodSave when you talked about it, it like I had just gotten off like doing a 2 hour phone bank. So, anyways, continue.
No, so yeah, that inspiration from the Clash and punk rock, I mean, carries all the way through to today, and we purposefully modeled that phone bank on Monday after London Calling. Like if a punk rock record could be a phone bank, that's what we wanted that phone bank to be. And we it was great. We made almost 3 million phone calls to
Wow.
Texas voters on the eve of the first day of early voting. And then, in some small way, I think we helped a lot of Texans decide to vote early. And the first day of early voting was bananas across Texas. You saw Harris County doubled their turnout. Denton County doubled their turnout. Big voter turnout in El Paso and Dallas and Travis County. So just
Wow.
all over the state. And it's because we've got great candidates and great volunteers, and there's something happening in Texas.
Well, I think you were the, kind of the one that started this incredible movement that's happening in Texas, because, and this is something I wanted to actually talk to you about. Like, I was so inspired at your commitment to getting on tour, essentially, like getting on the ground. And the fact that you were going to all of these places and speaking directly to all of these people in these towns all across Texas is like, I mean, that was when I first like heard about you and your campaign, and I just like was immediately drawn to it, because very similar in a way to just kind of how we feel as a band traveling around the country, seeing, all people from all different walks of life in this beautiful country that we live in. And I wanted to kind of ask you how it's felt doing a lot of this stuff remotely, because I know for me, I feel like on an emotional level and on a mental level, it's like hard for me not to be able to do a lot of face to face with folks. But how has it been for you, and how have you been getting people out to register to vote? Like how what's the process been like?
Yeah, it is hard. And in fact, I was going to ask you the same question, because I know how relentlessly you all have toured over the years. And that's got to be just part of your flow and your rhythm in life. And to lose that, at least temporarily, has got to be a challenge. And I think that's true also for candidates and campaigns and organizers, because I mean, we're human beings, and we really we're at our best when we're together and we're connecting and we're eyeball to eyeball. And to have to substitute a phone call for that is really unsatisfying, frankly. But it's as good as you can do, at least for the most part, in the midst of COVID. However, there are candidates now, and even organizations who are starting to do some safe door knocking. Put a
Yeah,
door hanger on the knob, knock on the door, take 10 steps back, and then, wearing a mask, have a conversation at a distance. I mean, it still is not the same thing as it used to
yeah,
be, but it's a way of connecting. And at a time that people are so isolated, to bring us together around this common purpose at this very defining, decisive moment. I mean, like these 18 days define the future trajectory of the U.S. forever, as far as I'm concerned. So you
yeah,
you want to know you have done all that you possibly could have, and I feel like these phone calls, these texts, these big phone banks, and now beginning to do some door to door block walking. I think that's as much as you can do right now, and thank God there are so many volunteers out there doing that. Let me ask you, what obviously you're registered, you're going to vote, you're talking to the people in your
I
life, and
voted. I already voted. I
you
I
voted.
sent my ballot
Awesome.
in. Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
How good did that feel?
It felt so good, and I'm still so stressed out, man. I can't. I'm like, I really feel like I'm losing my mind, and that's why it's felt so good to not only to vote and do all of the, there are a lot of props here in LA that I did the research on, and cross-referenced with, with other, reputable progressive organizations that I follow, and to do that work. And then additionally to do the phone banking that I did through Vote Save America, signing up for, I adopted Wisconsin. I'm sorry I didn't adopt Texas. But I'm here and I'm with you in spirit.
That's right.
And I'm sure there's still plenty to do, right? I mean, there's still plenty
Totally.
that we can do.
We have a phone bank, in fact, on Saturday. If you got some time around, I think noon your time, we're
Count
gonna be
me
making.
in.
Yeah,
Count
awesome.
me in, baby.
Cynthia Cano, you heard Sam say that, so let's make sure we get him on at least just for a few calls. You've got
I
if Willie
did.
Nelson's calling and Oprah's calling, Sam Harris has got a call as well.
Oh my God, of course. I did, let's see. I did 160 calls my last time. And the time before that, I think around like 120 calls. And
That's
it felt
that's
great.
legit.
It's legit. And and it's a lot of, you're right. It's like what you said on that wonderful Pod Save episode that you did. It's a lot of, like wrong numbers or just like misconnections. And then you do talk to, I mean, I'm sure it's very different for you too, because you're introducing yourself as Beto O'Rourke, and everyone wants to give you a piece of their mind.
Sure.
But,
Or just hang
it's,
up the phone on me right away.
or just hang up the phone on you right away, but it is really, I mean, it's eye-opening, and it's also real are not really able to do the kind of face-to-face connecting that we can, and it's left us feeling, a lot of us feeling pretty powerless. But doing the stuff that you have been doing with Powered by People, and that's where you feel able to center yourself a little bit in the midst of this chaos. But that's a long-winded answer to your question. I feel great about having voted. How about you? How
Yeah.
good does it feel?
No, it felt good to me too, but I feel exactly the way that you just described. Voting is not enough. I mean, I'm glad I did it. It felt good to cast my ballot, but I would not feel good if I were not doing everything in my power to reach other people and help them make a plan to vote. I called this guy. We were on a phone bank last night, and his name was Terry, lives in the Dallas area. And I said, hey, I'd love to help you make a plan to vote. And he's like, I'm on it. I'm going to vote tomorrow early. Here's where I'm going to go. And he said, but by the way, I don't believe this is Beto O'Rourke. And I said, well, I wish I had some way to prove it to you. And he said, FaceTime me. And so I did. And we
Wow.
connected. And he was so generous. He told me his story. He was an American Airlines flight attendant, was fired. No one's flying these days. And they've really, laid off a lot of people. And he's like, I'm coming to the realization that I'm probably not going to get that job back anytime soon. They're not going to rehire me or everyone else they laid off. And I'm struggling trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. But he said the nearest term thing I can do is vote, because I know if Joe Biden were in office, he'd be looking out for me, that we would have another stimulus bill, that I'd have some help finding a job, that we would take this public health crisis seriously and then get past it so that I could get back to work. And I loved how he connected the dots for me about why this election was so important to him. And that's something that you get out of phone banking that is hard just from reading the news or the comments on Twitter. I don't know that I would have met Terry on Twitter, but got to meet
Yeah,
him on the
probably
phone
not.
bank.
It's really incredibly moving to hear that. I wanna just talk a little bit about Texas a little bit more, and you've been stressing it as this hugely significant state in this election, which seems like kind of a no-brainer to me, because
Right?
just the sheer fact that, like, Texas is, as a matter of fact, it's a purple state right now, but we have the chance to turn it blue. And you're saying that if we win Texas, we'll have won on November 3rd and not weeks later. Like, how is that possible? Why specifically is this state, not just off of my gut feeling of like it being very important, but why is Texas so important for the future of the Democratic Party, and how will progress in Texas up and down the ballot, how is that going to matter for everybody else?
Yeah. So, you're so right. On November 3rd, we'll know the vote totals in Texas and some other states. No offense, but Pennsylvania, super important, critical state for Joe Biden, and I'm glad he's spending time there and investing there. But we won't know the results from Pennsylvania for days or maybe weeks after the election. Texas, you will know on the night of November 3rd. And if for the first time in half a century, Texas votes for the Democratic nominee, 38 electoral college votes, the biggest windfall of any swing state in contention, then mathematically this sucker is over. And there's not only no hope for Donald Trump to win an electoral college majority, there's also no opening or uncertainty that he can exploit to try to steal this election or illegally or illegitimately claim victory, which I am certain he's going to try to do, and we would be foolish.
I have no doubt. I have no
Right?
doubt in my mind. I mean, yeah. Oh God.
So Texas on that count is important. And then, as you know, because you've spent time here, it is second only to California in terms of diversity. 5.5 million eligible Latino voters. It is very much the future of this country. And if Democrats can win statewide in Texas, then really it forever changes the electoral landscape in America. So much that is seemingly out of reach, like a comprehensive response to climate or gun violence or expanding access to healthcare. With Texas and with this incredibly diverse electorate, you can get it done. And then last thing is that you've got state house races where if we win a majority in the state house for the first time in 20 years, all the voter suppression that you hear about and is true about Texas, you can begin to dismantle that. The voter ID, the ballot place closures, the racial gerrymandering.
That's something I kind of wanted to ask you about. So can you explain a little bit of what's been going on in terms of voter suppression in Texas? So I have a little bit of a clearer understanding of how it's been happening.
It's such a disturbing story as I've learned it in full. I mean, it's essentially been happening for the last 144 years, ever since the end of Reconstruction. You had, segregation, Jim Crow, the poll tax, but you also had for 20 years in the 20th century, something that was known as the all-white Democratic primary. If you were black, you literally, by the force of law, could not vote. It wasn't implied. They weren't playing games. They just literally spelled it out in black and white. You will not vote. And that happened in the lifetime of some of those who are still with us today. And so that only goes to show how long this has been going on. In the modern era, you have congressional districts drawn along racial boundaries. And so if you're black, you are very likely drawn out of a district to diminish the power of the vote and the likelihood that you'll vote at all. You have polling place
and so that
closures.
means like your district is going to get less polling places, so it's going to take longer for you, right? Is that like that's
Bingo.
one tactic?
Bingo.
Yeah.
You see people queued up for 6 or 7 hours at a polling place. That's not just because people are excited to vote. That's part of it, but it is by design to dissuade people from voting, because someone drives by that and they say, "Holy shit, I'm not waiting in line for fuck that. I'm going home."
Yeah.
And they do. And by design, when you've closed 750 polling places, then your state has grown by the millions, and you focus those polling place closures on those communities with the fastest growing Black and Latino populations. It's very clear what this is all about. So yeah, all of that is in the mix. And what we all have to do, and what I'm so grateful that the Biden-Harris campaign is doing, is focus attention and resources in Texas to help those voters overcome those voter suppression challenges and make sure that they can actually cast their ballot. And so that's another important dynamic of Texas. Not only is it winning the presidential election, winning the state house, it's overcoming voter suppression.
Right. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about that being one of the things that is exciting you about the Biden-Harris ticket. I'm also really, really interested in this economic plan that he's been talking about, green energy, because I know Texas is such an energy state too. What can you tell me a little bit more about what their policy is? So it's right now it's an economic plan that's going to bring more jobs by creating more green energy, correct? Like that's kind of what his.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So, you know, the moral imperative, I mean, the imperative, if you care about human life or any life on this planet, is arresting the warming of our planet. And, you know, to do so, you have to make a very quick transition to renewable energy, all the infrastructure, the transmission lines that make that possible.
Yeah.
And the way Joe Biden has couched this is as a jobs plan where he can put millions of Americans to work. It's almost like an FDR level response to the greatest
Right.
recession since the Great Depression. There's so many Americans who have so much to add, who are out of work right now, who could be their talent and energy harnessed in service to making sure that we can preserve the human species and make this planet okay for the generations that follow ours, and, you know, just create a lot of jobs, a lot of economic growth, and ensure that America is a leader in this, because some country's going to figure this out, and I'd much
Yeah.
rather it be us than anyone else. I should note. So Cynthia's texting me that a lot of people are having a hard time seeing us. We will make sure for those who are watching right now, and then let your friends know who can't get a connection. We will archive this conversation as well to make sure that you can hear from Sam and me about this election. And then Sam, if they give us another shot, we should try to connect again, because I think Cynthia's saying that for most people the transmission is frozen.
Oh, bummer. Oh no.
I know.
When did that happen?
I don't know, but I can see that there's only like 9 people on right now. So
Maybe
that may explain it. I thought it was me, but I think it's the transmission. It's the connection.
I can try reconnecting. I can go a little closer to where this Wi-Fi is. Would that help? Or we can reconnect to.
Yeah, we can give it a shot. Here, let's do this. Why don't we both close? I'll come on again for another 5 minutes, and we'll join, and we'll kind of we'll close out together on a better connection. Sound
Awesome.
good? Okay,
right,
let's
man.
try it.
Okay.